Um, I am Sydney Harris. I work for the Product Stewardship Institute. I'm our policy and programs manager and our lead on packaging, EPR, and plastics work. So that's why I'm here. And Kate, why don't you just introduce yourself? Who are you? Who's EcoCycle?
Hi everyone, Kate Bailey with EcoCycle. I am the policy director for our team. We are based in Boulder, Colorado, and EcoCycle is one of the oldest and largest nonprofit recycling organizations actually in the world. So we started one of the first 20 curbside recycling programs in the US back in 1976, and we have been in the business of recycling materials ever since then. So for more than 45 years, actually running the trucks, collecting the materials, selling them to markets, educating consumers about how to participate, and educating governments around why recycling is important and how we can do more.
I love it. All right, so we're here specifically today because EcoCycle has been such a strong leader and advocate for Colorado's brand new EPR for PPP law, which is extended producer responsibility for packaging and paper products, which is such a mouthful. Let's start with the PPP of that mouthful. So the new law covers packaging and paper products. Why is that, and what else does it cover or not cover, and why?
So we like to think about this law as the stuff you buy. It's the containers, the packaging, the paper that you consume every day in your home. So if you go to the grocery store, think about it as the packaging that comes around your cereal, the bag, the box. If you go to buy a new computer, it's the box around the new computer. If you go to Home Depot, it's the box around the screws or whatever you're buying. So it's the packaging that contains the product that we're using every day in our home, and it covers all of the products. So whether it's paper, metal, glass, plastic, we're really targeting everything, and also focus on what you consume at home. So it doesn't necessarily cover what's consumed by businesses or industries. Is really focused on homes and building a recycling system for those materials. We wanted to cover all of those products because they all are an important part of making a recycling system work. So we didn't want to just look at plastics or just look at paper. This was really about building a robust recycling system around all of the packaging that we are using in our everyday lives.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I always think about it as like, I put all that stuff in the same bin where I live. That's how they collect it. So it would be very confusing to me as just a regular consumer if I had to be separating out different things for the EPR program versus like some other form of recycling or collection that's not the EPR program. Right now, it's all together. So it makes sense to me to cover it all together. Um, okay, so why did Colorado pursue an EPR policy? What were the driving factors behind that? Why are we here today?
So we really saw EPR as the right policy to approach three major things. We are seeing rampant climate change, we are seeing rampant plastic pollution, and we are seeing unprecedented disruptions in the supply chain. So we are literally not able to get the materials that we need to make new products. And we saw this as such a fundamental opportunity to invest in recycling as a solution to these three major challenges. So this bill is not just about, yes, we want to improve our recycling rate. We can definitely do a lot better as a state in terms of recycling. But why are we recycling? Because recycling is a very effective, very easy action we can all do every day to address climate change, to reduce plastic pollution, and to help our businesses get the materials that they need back into the system so that they can make new products and packaging, and we can mitigate some of the challenges we're seeing right now with material shortages and price inflation.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, and Colorado's new law, this EPR for PPP law that just passed, is what we call a full EPR law. So that means producers are going to be managing and funding the recycling system across the state, which is different from the two laws that passed last year in Oregon and Maine in a few ways in terms of how it will operate and look day to day. So both of those fall a little bit closer toward what we call the municipal reimbursement end of the EPR model spectrum. There's a lot of different ways you can do EPR, and Colorado's is a little bit more of the full EPR. So why did you choose that full EPR model for Colorado specifically? And did you draw from any existing models or examples or programs?
One of the great things about EPR is that it's been working in nearly 40 countries and provinces for decades. So there was plenty of opportunity to draw from that background and to look at how do we bring the right system to Colorado. We looked extensively at Canadian programs, we looked at programs in the EU, we talked to Oregon, we talked to Maine, we talked to all the different states looking at this, and we looked at what's going to work for Colorado. And what we came to was that Colorado has a very open market when it comes to recycling. We are not a state where cities are invested in recycling services. Most of our recycling is provided by private companies who operate with very little oversight or direction from the cities. That's a big contrast from other states where cities have been the ones to stand up and run the recycling programs for the past 30 years. So we looked at, we need a lot of investment, capital investment, equipment, education to really build out a robust recycling system in Colorado. And we don't feel like that money should come from the municipalities. That money should come from the companies that are making this packaging and this paper and need to get that paper back. So we saw this as an opportunity for the companies who are managing their packaging, a chance for them to manage their system in a way that they get the materials back. They will work very closely with municipalities and haulers and all that, but we really felt that having an industry-run solution was the best fit for Colorado.
Love it. And you mentioned a couple of industry sectors there. I'm curious, I think folks are going to be curious to hear a little bit more of your perspective on what it took to get this bill passed into law, right? When did you start working on the bill? What was the process like? I know you had a ton of stakeholder meetings. And how did you get a sponsor? And then what was it like once it was introduced? Where was the opposition coming from? What were the challenges? The whole process. Take us through the journey.
I joke that my journey started almost 20 years ago when I first learned about EPR and was like, wow, that's what we ultimately need to get to. So excited to be talking about it today, and rest assured it's not going to take 20 years for everybody else to do it. But we really started beating the drum on improving recycling in Colorado about 4 or 5 years ago and really starting to make it a priority for the state legislature. So in the past several years, we've passed several high-profile laws that are going to improve various aspects of recycling. So we've really been building a strong coalition of both legislative support as well as environmental, municipal advocates to support recycling. So we went into this process with, a strong recognition that Colorado needed to do more on recycling. And EcoCycle partnered with Recycle Colorado, our statewide recycling organization, to really, kick off this stakeholder process. It was in 2019 or 2020 we passed a bill that did a number of things, but one of them was it initiated a study on EPR for Colorado. And the results of that study came out in 2021. It was conducted by our state agency, and it basically said this could work really well for Colorado, and these are some of the principles of a good system. And so using that report, we worked with Recycle Colorado and we launched an extensive stakeholder process late summer and fall last year. Then out of that process, we had a set of principles that Recycle Colorado stood for EPR. That's where we determined it should be an industry-run solution. We should focus mostly on residential. We wanted to include packaging and paper. We set some of those basic guideposts, and then we used that to craft the legislation that came, that was sort of later in the fall. And then honestly, we really invested in the stakeholder process. We probably had 80 stakeholder meetings between the fall and when the bill passed. We spoke to
Wow.
anybody and everybody about this because it is a new a big idea, a big change, a transformative change for recycling. And so there's lots of complexities. We had a rock star legislative champion both in the House and the Senate, Representative Lisa Cutter in the House and Senator Kevin Priola and Senator Julie Gonzalez in the Senate were absolutely pivotal to making this happen. We also really built a diverse coalition. So we had Recycle Colorado as a statewide membership group representing the recycling industry. We had environmental advocates and social justice advocates championing this bill. We developed a strong coalition of national and state businesses as well. So we were able to work closely with Coca-Cola, Unilever, Walmart, Nestle, Mars, some of the really big brands who came forward to say they're willing to stand up these programs and invest in recycling. That was a really pivotal turning point, I think, both for Colorado and the nation as well. And we had in-state businesses championing as well. So that broad coalition was huge. We also, of course, had opposition. A lot of that opposition came from other businesses who don't want to take responsibility for their packaging, who are happy to keep the status quo where residents have to pay for, or taxpayers have to pay to manage packaging. So, those laggards, I would say, in the business community were strong opponents. There was also a lot of just misconceptions and misunderstandings around how this is going to operate. This is a big new change. So a lot of our chambers of commerce were opposed, concerned about the regulation on businesses, and just a lot of misunderstanding around the complexities of it that brought out some of the opposition as well.
And you mentioned Rep. Lisa Cutter, really excited that we're going to get to do a webinar on this new law in late July with her. So everybody stay tuned for that. But yeah, it sounds like it was definitely a journey. Obviously, we know we were there for a bunch of it. It was definitely a difficult uphill climb, I think, but you did such a good job with all the coalition building. It was really impressive. So let's talk about what this is going to look like. The law passed. Hooray. What is going to be the role specifically for private sector haulers and processors, the people who collect, and process all of this material under the new system? And what about like nonprofit MRFs like EcoCycle? Like, what about you?
One of the priorities and the principles of this bill is it builds off the existing recycling system. We want to take what is working on the ground and we want to build it out and expand it and make it more efficient and really make it more robust. So it's going to be a strong partnership with the existing haulers, the municipalities, the MRFs, the players in Colorado who already know the system, know the communities. The way that the system is going to unfold over the next couple of years is eventually the program is going to start in 2026. At that point, haulers across the state will be reimbursed for their cost to provide recycling services to residents. So you as a resident will get recycling at no charge, and the hauler who's providing the truck and the pickup and everything will basically send a bill to the packaging companies who will form a producer responsibility organization to manage all of this. And they will develop contract terms and things like that so that the haulers will be reimbursed. Our goal was to maintain the private sector of hauling that we have across the state. It doesn't require cities to start hauling trucks. If cities do haul materials, they can participate as well and be reimbursed. And we really see this as a big business opportunity for recycling companies. I mean, we're looking to probably double or triple the amount of materials we collect. We're looking to greatly expand access, open new markets. There's a lot of business opportunity in here for haulers, and they are definitely pivotal to making this work, and they're going to be a big part of the conversation moving forward.
So just to recap, you're definitely not concerned on behalf of EcoCycle that this will impact any of your operations, right? I mean, you should just be getting more materials in, right?
You know, it was really helpful that we are an operator. We run the trucks, we do the education, we run the MRF. So we were always looking at this policy from the lens of how is this going to work for the system, you know, for the folks on the ground. And it is a big change, right? We're adding in this new oversight and these new goals and new players, and but we think that the process is right. There's a lot of feedback, planning, feedback, revising to go in to make sure that the system works for everybody. And yeah, at the end of the day, as a MRF, we're really excited to get more material and cleaner material because we're going to have a strong education program as well. So we're able to clean up recycling at the same time.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to turn this a little bit towards something that can be very controversial, but we got to ask the hard questions. How does the new law define recycling, and how else does it get at the issue of quote unquote chemical recycling, which is not a term that I like because it's pretty meaningless, but it's pretty well recognized, and people often ask about chemical recycling, and it's this emerging suite of technologies. We're not really sure. A lot of them are unproven, but there's a lot of announcements going on about this. And how does this law address it? Usually that's done through the definition of recycling, but there are also other policy mechanisms. So however it gets worked in.
So we were very clear in our definition of recycling that for material to be recycled, it must be made back into a new product. Anything that's being converted to energy or burned to make fuel is not considered recycling. That's consistent with the EPA definition of recycling and many national and global definitions of recycling. So we started from that premise of no fuel and no waste to energy under recycling. But as you know, chemical recycling is a suite of technologies, some of which produce fuel, so we've ruled those out, some of which then produce products, plastics to plastics, conversion technologies, depolymerization, things like that. We left the door open for those technologies because we do need new technologies in the recycling system. But knowing that they are still emerging and have some concerns regarding their environmental performance and things like that, we adopted some of the language from the Oregon Recycling Modernization Act. So if the program chooses to use recycling that is not mechanical recycling, so if they choose chemical recycling, they have to submit documentation that is proven to meet air quality regulations, that there's been an environmental review, that we know where the materials are going. So we've put stronger regulations on the use of chemical recycling to make sure that if and as it emerges, it's done in a way that has environmental benefit and is definitely not producing fuel or energy.
Got it. Okay, that sounds great. Very reasonable. Let's just start to wrap up. Last real question for you is, now that the law has passed and, we have a little bit of a picture of what it's going to look like, what are the next steps? What happens now?
I would say it breaks down into two things. First, we got a lot of work to do in Colorado. We've got several years to build this out, but it's going to be lots of things are going to happen in that process. So by the end of the year, the state's going to set up an advisory board, which is going to be a key group of stakeholders that are going to help oversee and make recommendations on this whole system as it develops. The companies that are going to be responsible, the brand names, are already in discussions about how to form a producer responsibility organization and starting to look at their next steps. The state is looking to hire staff to manage the program. So we immediately, as soon as the bill was signed, lots of balls got in motion, and that's been really exciting to see. So lots happening there. And then the really second big body of work is, how do we get this model across the country, right? Colorado was the third state to do this, and we do not want to be the last. We want to be, the jumping off point. So help states implement their policies. How do we improve upon this? How do we really build out a national system? And so, happy to share what worked for us, all of that to help others move forward.
Love it. Yeah. And obviously, we're doing a ton of that together behind the scenes, coordinating across the country with all the all the folks leading these bills in dozens of other states. So there's so much momentum. I too would like to see more of these laws pass, and I think that they will. But let's end on a fun note. I know there's a lot to do, as you just said, but you just did so much work passing this law, and you're taking off next month for vacation. What are your plans so we can all be jealous?
Yes, this was quite the battle, and I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take off for a while in July and have some fun plans. I've got a yoga retreat out in the mountains of Colorado, so it's a mix of yoga in the morning and then some paddleboarding, kayaking, hiking,
Yeah.
basically having somebody tell me how to relax for a week.
Relaxing with
the stage. Yeah, and then, I live in an amazing state. I'm going to do some camping, some rock climbing, some hiking for the rest of the month, and just really look to enjoy. Summer is my time, so I'm going to enjoy it and appreciate the work that I've done, and come back relaxed and ready to hit the ground running on the next steps.
I love it. I'll join you. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Great. Well, that's all I've got. I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Kate, for everything that you've done and for this chat. And I know that when you're back in August, we have lots on the docket already. So can't wait for that. But also can't wait to join you on all of your July trips. Here we go.
Yes. And I just want to say special thanks to PSI for all the support along the way, and especially to Sydney for staying up, I believe, until at least 1 a.m. to testify on the bill. It was a bit of a crazy process, but some serious dedication.
Worth it. So worth it. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you next time.